Welcome to TopSpot40 Music Docuseries, where we bring the stories behind the music to life.
In the golden age of television, when families gathered around bulky sets with rabbit-ear antennas, a fresh-faced young man stepped into American living rooms and never really left. His name was Dick Clark, and for more than half a century, he wore the perfect smile of someone who genuinely loved what he was doing. They called him America's oldest teenager, and the nickname fit like a well-worn pair of saddle shoes. Because even when his hair turned silver and the calendar pages kept turning, Dick Clark never lost that sparkle in his eye whenever the music started to play. Picture Philadelphia in the mid-1950s. The city was humming with a new sound. Rock and roll was bubbling up from rhythm and blues clubs and corner street corner harmonies, but many parents weren't sure what to make of it. Then, in 1956, a local disc jockey named Dick Clark took over a struggling afternoon dance show called Bandstand. Within months, the program was renamed American Bandstand and beamed out across the nation on ABC. Suddenly, every Saturday afternoon became a ritual. Millions of teenagers rushed home from school, pushed the living room furniture aside, and danced right along with the clean-cut kids on the studio floor. Dick had an instinct for what felt right. He stood on that bandstand stage in his crisp suits and narrow ties, looking like the cool older brother every parent hoped their daughter would bring home. He spoke directly to the camera with the calm confidence of a man who believed music could bridge any gap. "This is Bandstand," he would say, that famous voice warm and welcoming, "and we're going to have ourselves a good time." And they did. The show featured a simple formula that proved magical. Kids dancing, artists performing, and a segment called Rate a Record, where teenagers gave their honest opinions. "It's got a good beat and you can dance to it. I'll give it a 92. What Dick Clark understood better than almost anyone was that rock and roll wasn't just a passing fad. It was the voice of a generation finding itself. He gave that voice a national stage. Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, and Laverne Baker found their way onto the show when many mainstream programs still looked the other way. Dick didn't see color when he looked at talent. He saw kids who wanted to dance. And when he introduced a young singer named Elvis Presley, or later brought on the fresh-faced Beatles, he helped make this exciting new music feel safe enough for the whole family. The Caravan of Stars tours he organized became the stuff of legend. Picture a fleet of buses rolling across America in the early 60s, carrying artists like Gene Pitney, the Shirelles, and a young singer named Diana Ross with her group The Supremes. These tours played to packed houses in towns that had never seen anything quite like it. Kids who had only known these performers from their black and white television screens suddenly got to experience the music live, screaming along to every chorus. Dick Clark had created a traveling celebration of the very sound he was helping to shape. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. When the payola scandal rocked the music industry in the late 50s and early 60s, many careers were destroyed. Dick was called before Congress, and the spotlight turned harsh. But he faced those hearings with the same steady composure he showed on television. He sold his publishing interests, testified honestly, and emerged with his reputation largely intact. In an era when many were looking for villains, Dick Clark somehow remained the trustworthy face of popular music. That tells you something about the character behind the smile. As the years rolled on and musical tastes changed, Dick changed with them without ever seeming desperate. When the British invasion arrived, he welcomed the Rolling Stones and the Dave Clark Five with the same enthusiasm he'd shown for homegrown talent. When soul music took center stage, he gave James Brown, Aretha Franklin, and Stevie Wonder the same prominent platform. The Jackson 5 danced across that bandstand stage as kids, then returned years later as superstars. Through it all, Dick remained the constant, the man who could introduce a heavy metal band one week and a country crossover star the next, always treating each guest with genuine respect. His empire grew far beyond Bandstand. There was the game show Where the Action Is, the wildly popular Pyramid franchise where his quick wit and warmth made him a natural host, and of course, New Year's Rockin' Eve. For millions of us, ringing in the new year simply wasn't complete without Dick Clark counting down to midnight in Times Square. Even when bitter cold winds whipped through New York, he stood there in his overcoat, breath visible in the air, bringing the nation together with music and that familiar, reassuring voice. When he suffered a stroke in 2004 and had to pass the primary hosting duties to Ryan Seacrest, it felt like the passing of a torch from one generation's favorite uncle to the next. But perhaps what made Dick Clark so special was how completely human he remained. He loved cars, enjoyed a good laugh, and never pretended to be cooler than the music he presented. He understood that his job wasn't to be the star. His job was to shine the spotlight on the artists and let the music do the talking. In doing so, he became something larger than any single hit record or television season. He became the man who connected generations through 3-minute and 30-second miracles pressed into vinyl. Think about the cultural earthquake he helped guide. In the button-down 1950s, Dick Clark showed parents that rock and roll didn't have to be frightening. In the turbulent 1960s, he offered a place where teenagers could gather without protest or politics, just the pure joy of dancing. By the 1970s and beyond, he remained a steady hand on the wheel while disco, punk, and MTV completely transformed the landscape. Through every shift, he kept that essential truth alive. Music matters. It brings us together. It makes us feel young again. When Dick Clark passed away in 2012 at the age of 82, the tributes poured in from every corner of the music world. Artists he had introduced as unknowns spoke of how he had changed their lives. Former bandstand regulars, now grandparents themselves, remembered those Saturday afternoons with misty eyes. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from the way people kept gathering around their televisions and screens, looking for that familiar smile and that voice that had been with them through every chapter of their lives. Dick Clark proved something beautiful about the human spirit. He showed us that curiosity, kindness, and an open heart don't have to fade with age. That you really can be forever young if you stay close to the music that moves you. So, the next time you hear a song that takes you right back to your teenage years, whether it's Rock Around the Clock, Stop, In the Name of Love, or something from last summer, take a moment to smile and think of the man who spent his life making sure the music kept playing. Because somewhere, in a television studio that exists only in memory, Dick Clark is still standing on that bandstand stage, microphone in hand, introducing the next big thing with that boyish grin. And the kids are still dancing.
Thank you for joining us for TopSpot40 Music docuseries. Discover all the stories behind the music at TopSpot40.com. Until next time, keep the music playing.